Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up, man up, or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thank you for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, and I'm pretty fired up to be talking with him today, I just want to take a moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now. If you're ready to start taking action on becoming a better father, better man, you want to be more fit, more healthy, I just ask you to take a look at our brotherhood. We have some pretty cool things going on over on our private Facebook group. It's a totally free group. It's called the Fit Dad Base Camp, and you can find that at facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Base Camp. So today, my guest is Alex Van Houten, and he's doing some great work. And like me, he's specifically helping dads get fit, healthy, and become better parents, husbands, and men. He's been in the fitness industry for over 13 years now, and he runs Defining Dad Bod, and he has his own podcast as well. So, Alex, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Dude, thanks for having me, Steve. I love being able to hang out with another guy doing awesome things in this space.
Yeah, man. Let's do it. So, before we jump into all the stuff I want to get into, just tell us a little bit about your story, how you ended up here helping dads.
Yeah, man. My story goes way back, actually, so I'll keep it to 2 minutes or less if I can help it. And I went to school for chemical engineering and psychology, if you can believe it, with a pre-medical focus. And my goal was to become an orthopedic surgeon. And at the time, I was running a personal training business on the side. I've always been the athletic guy. And what I found is that doctors don't really like their jobs and patients don't want to be there. So I stayed with the personal training side of things. And that was 13 years ago. And since then, I've gotten to help just about everybody from the athletic population to actually I found a niche with postmenopausal women, which is neither here nor there. But what was interesting about the experiences that I had is that I got really inundated with the information around hormones and how exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle affect the hormonal system and how the hormonal system affects body composition. And then all of that came to a head for me when I became a dad 3 years ago. My son was born. It was the first time that I'd ever struggled with my own health and fitness. And, the six pack that I had was, kind of fading away and 13 years in the fitness industry, you're like, what the hell is happening to me? So I dove into the research and found there's so much out there about what happens to mom's body when she has a baby. And there's precious little out there about what happens to dad. And the research that I found blew me away and changed my paradigm really hardcore. And so I shifted my focus and my business to understanding more about what causes the dad bod and how to help other people overcome it.
Yeah, actually, I just listened to your podcast show with Larry Hagner, Dad's Edge podcast, and you went pretty deep on some of the hormonal issues that I think are often overlooked. So, one of the reasons I wanted to have you here, I want to help dads live better, and I just can't do it by myself. And you're doing similar work. The dad market has become super hot in the last few years, and I know you're doing great things to educate men on what it takes to live a healthy lifestyle and kind of realize that they aren't stuck with their quote unquote dad bods. Yeah. So, it's funny. The dad bod is kind of a term that's become super popular now, and it's, I guess, synonymous with a kind of a soft and squishy body that you see a lot of kind of middle-aged and even younger dads have, just because, in my experience, when you start having kids, your health, your fitness, and you go to the end of the line, right? And most guys put themselves last. And, so many guys are dealing with the same things, right? High stress, maybe it's a high stress job, a commute, they sit a lot all day long, poor diet, fast food, sodas, they're not exercising, they're not moving well, and they're using excuses like, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough energy. And so, that's what we see, right? We go to the pool, we go to the beach, and we see the dad bod.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, part of my passion is I believe that with what we understand about nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle change in this day and age, that biological assurance of creating the dad bod can actually be consciously changed so that we dads can make a decision about what we want our bodies to stand for, hence defining dad bod. And so I think we can do something about it, man.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not, it's not about six-pack abs. Would that hurt? No. I mean, no guy's going to say, I don't want six-pack abs, but that's not what it's about. It's so much bigger. But, I want to hear your thoughts on something, and this is something I feel very strongly about. And, so many guys that I've coached and spoken with, dads, think that it's selfish that they're spending time on themselves, meal prepping, shopping, going to the gym, taking care of themselves, trying to stay fit and healthy. And I say it's the exact opposite. It's selfish if you're not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? And we can either spend it in a way that is self-serving, or we can spend it in a way that fills our cup and fills the world around us, so we can quote, minister out of the overflow, as some people like to say. I think something that I've learned through the Defining Dad Bod process, and in the movement that I started last year, and the podcast interviews that I've had, is that the core tenet of Defining Dad Bod is twofold. You have one, the commitment to bettering yourself every single day. And that number two, that bleeds over into your kids. So my huge question to dads is, okay, it's selfish to spend time at the gym. It's selfish to spend time nutritionally. It's selfish to go to bed on time and wake up at a good time. It's selfish to spend a little time away from the family so that you can redefine yourself as a man and come back strong. Okay, fine. That's all selfish. What do you want for your kids then, dude? Because they're going to do what you do and not what you say. And do you want your kid thinking it's selfish to go work out at the gym? Do you want your kid thinking it's selfish to prep good meals for the family to eat? Do you want your kid thinking it's selfish to get a little time to himself every once in a while? And when you ask dads that question, and you get them really thinking about what habits they're passing on to their children, it shifts the whole paradigm. There's nothing more selfless than modeling a life that you want your kids to have. And so if you're struggling with your own personal health and fitness, then that's exactly what you're going to pass on to them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, absolutely. But, since the majority of our country is overweight, we're clearly not doing our jobs as parents as good role models, at least from a health and fitness perspective. I mean, why is that, right? We know that our kids are watching us. They're not necessarily always listening, hey, do this, do that. They're watching us. We're modeling, they're going to model their behaviors after ours. If we're constantly stopping at McDonald's or Burger King, they're going to learn those things. But this country is fat, right? So it's not working. I mean, what is it going to take? And I don't have the answer, obviously, but we got to think about what is it going to take to change that mentality, where we're actually doing the work that we want our kids to see instead of just using excuses.
Absolutely. And statistically, it's 9 times more likely that a child will be obese if his or her parents are obese. It's unquestioning that the genetic predisposition for obesity and the lifestyle environmental factors that create obesity can easily be passed from parent to child. And so if we ourselves can't figure this out, we're simply just passing the buck on to our kids, because they're going to have to figure it out in some form or fashion. And so I think it's on us and on this generation of parents, if we care to do so. I think it's on us to really figure out this problem for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it scares me. I have 2 young daughters, 13 and 10, and 13 is she's in 8th grade, right in that super impressionable. And so, I really make a concentrated effort to lead by example. She goes to the gym with me on Saturdays. We're always doing active stuff, and it's not about weight. It's not about body image. It's not about sizes. It's just about being healthy. It's about feeling good. It's about moving more. And that's, it's just, I want her to grow up learning that versus what most kids are learning. And it's sad, vending machines in the schools with crap. I mean, just like it's nuts. And you go out and, they play sports, and you go to the games and you see half the kids on these sports teams. These are, 10, 12, 14-year-old kids. There's a good amount of them that are overweight, and, while they may outgrow it, it's baby fat, whatever, the bigger issue for me anyway is what are they learning, and what's going to happen not only in adulthood, but from a social standpoint, kids that are overweight, and I was bullied mercilessly, not for being overweight, but for something else. But kids are brutal, right? You get an overweight kid, it's terrible. I mean, they're not always, but I think about the social impact of that, and they're learning bad habits, and it's going to carry over. I'm 47 years old. I still think about my 7th and 8th grade years of this one bully in particular. I mean, this is 30 years, 40 years later. It's crazy to think that it could have such an impact on your life, and that scares me.
Absolutely. And I think that when we talk about obesity and children and stuff, it's important to understand that there are so many factors that play into it, that if we care to be really conscious parents and we care about leaving a legacy of health and fitness, it's important to understand those markers that really affect children. So just as an example, for instance, your fat cells, or your ability to proliferate fat cells, actually begins in the womb. And so the amount of processed carbohydrates that a mother might eat and how she actually sleeps can affect the baby's circadian rhythm, and how many fat cells and how insulin resistant the child is coming out of the womb. Breastfeeding plays a role in whether or not a child puts on a lot of weight really fast. And then what's interesting about fat cells is you can shrink them in your lifetime, but you can't really get rid of them unless you scrape them out via liposuction. So whatever fat cells you generate as a child, you will carry those all the way through and into adulthood, and they can get larger and smaller, but you're not going to get rid of them. Unfortunately, brain cells don't work that way, right? That would be but another thing that affects children, for instance, is they have much less glycogen stores than we do as parents. They might have 100 to 500 calories of carbohydrates in their body at any given time that they can draw from. And if you watch my 3-year-old run around the house, the dude is burning some carbs, man. He's just nuking through them. And so kids will want something carb heavy, like an apple or a graham cracker or something like that. And we as parents will keep that stuff in the pantry because those are the things that the kids want to reach for. What happens is we become less conscious about them. We start eating more of them. We start keeping stuff like that around. And before you know it, we've got high fructose corn syrup, gummy fruit snacks in the fridge. And that's what everybody's going to. So what happens is the progression of childhood development has a lot of different points at which we can make a big difference in the obesity epidemic if we care to be conscious about what we're feeding our kids, how we're treating them before they're even born, and then what kind of lifestyle we lead following that. Like screen time could be another thing that we talk about. So there's so many factors, Steve, that could result in your kid being bullied in 7th grade because they're a little chubby and you didn't do what you needed to do as a parent to keep that from happening to them.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. So I'm going to give you an example. And I had posted this. I posted a photo in my private group. This was earlier this year, and it got a lot of backlash. I pissed a lot of people off. I was at a 10U softball game with my daughter. So these are 10-year-old girls, right? And my daughter's like, she was like 50 pounds. I mean, they're all little kids, right? And this one kid on the team was, I thought she was an adult. She was probably 5'8", 250 pounds at least. This huge girl, right? And she, clearly, didn't fit in with the team. She didn't look like a 10-year-old. And so I took a picture of her with her dad, who was the coach, who was at least 450 pounds. And so I wasn't bashing them. I wasn't, I said, but this is the dad's fault. Like this girl may have some genetic issues. It's possible. Yes. She's obviously growing quickly, but look at the mom. I saw the mom and the dad, both extremely overweight. They had a huge, big gulp in their hand. They're eating candy bars like hot dogs. I'm like, this is a lifestyle problem, and it pisses me off to see. I felt so bad for this girl because she doesn't know any better, right? She's around it all the time. Yeah, but, everyone comes out of the woodwork. Oh, you're fat shaming, you're blah, blah, and I'm like, whatever. This is how I see it, right? And, it's so frustrating, and we're not doing our jobs. We're not. This country is fat. There's no doubt about it. It's getting worse, not better. The numbers keep going up. Maybe we've had a few dips here, but the numbers are astronomical. And, it's going to be problematic for their health. And I seriously am concerned for my kids. I really am.
Yeah. I mean, for me, let's say I do everything right. And maybe I don't, maybe I suck, but maybe I try to do everything right. And my son grows up with great exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle habits. And he has a great physical fitness life. And, exercise doesn't have to be a means to an end for him. He can, go on to do what he needs to do in his career without having to worry about low energy and fat shaming and all kinds of stuff, right? Even if I do everything right with him, but I don't affect anybody in my community, then what are the healthcare costs going to look like for him as far as health insurance is concerned? If everybody's got type 2 diabetes because they generated that over, a period of time from a standpoint of insulin resistance, what if everybody would prefer to eat a Twinkie over a grass-fed beef patty? Then Twinkies are going to cost like 25 cents and grass-fed beef patties are going to be like $8 a pop, So like the effects of this can be really far-reaching, even for my child, even if I do everything right and he's not directly affected by obesity. And so I love what you're saying. And I think one of the important things to note with regard to making a difference in the community of parents and then therefore the community of kids is not necessarily from a fat shaming, like you said, people giving you a hard time about fat shaming, but I think it's important and definitely time that we all take personal responsibility for our own health and fitness in that respect. The very first episode of my show, Defining Dad Bod, is called Dad Bod is Not Your Fault. And I spend 15 minutes telling the guy listening, look, Dad Bod's not your fault. Here's all of the things that happen when you become a dad. Here are all of the biological markers, serotonin, cortisol, testosterone, all of the biological markers that drive dad bod. It's not your fault. And then at the end of the episode, I say, hey, bud, now that you know what this is, you have to take responsibility for it now. Sorry, kid. Like I tricked you into this. But if you know this, if you know that the big gulp you're drinking is screwing with your 450 pounds and it's ruining your daughter's hormonal system because that's what she's doing too, now you have to do something about it. And you can either consciously say, you know what, I like my big gulp and I'm not going to do a damn thing about it. So suck on that. Okay, cool. But you consciously told me that. You consciously told yourself that, and you consciously told your daughter that. And I think that's an important thing that I care to get across to the community, Steve, in defining dad bod is it's time for us to take responsibility because there's so much information out there. At least we can look at the things that we're doing that make a big difference and start addressing them.
Yeah, for sure. And in my experience, it's not that I've seen so many guys say, well, this isn't my fault. This just happened to me. I think it's more that they make excuses like, well, I look like a piece of shit and I feel like shit, but I'm really busy and I've got 3 kids and, I'm behind on all my bills and we're up in our eyeballs in debt and my wife and I are fighting and we may be separated. Like all this stuff gets in the way. And so it's just a way to, validate the fact that they're not doing shit. And so that's, I don't know about for you, but for me, that's, my biggest frustration and what I hear time and time again as a coach trying to work with dads, that it's excuses. So yeah, it comes down to ownership, but also, something that you've talked about before is they have to find their why, right? Why do they want to be fit? Like everybody wants to feel great, have tons of energy, look awesome, feel great naked, be super attractive to their wife. Of course, every single person wants that, right? But very few will do it because they don't have a strong emotional reason why they're going to do it that's going to force them to make the sacrifices they have to make. And it doesn't have to be a ton, but they are going to have to make some to get there.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think part of the goal setting process for me and my clients, I actually have them, it's about a 15 to 30 minute exercise depending on the person. And I ask, what is your health and fitness heaven? Imagine everything is flowers and sunshine and rainbows from a health and fitness perspective. What is heaven for you and your family? Is it the 6-pack abs? Is it I have all the energy that I need? Is it that I, fit into the work clothes that make me feel confident? Is it that I go for a walk with my kids rather than screen time at 6 p.m.? Whatever it is, let's construct that. And so we have something to run toward. And then I ask, what is your health and fitness hell? Let's imagine the worst part of you and the worst habits that you have and the worst things that you're doing right now in your life, they get the better of you and you don't change them. What is likely going to happen? I'm going to die of cardiovascular disease in 2 years because it runs in my family, or I won't be able to go to bed with my wife and be very satisfying because my libido is garbage, or I won't feel very good about my, body image, and that's going to pass on to my daughter, or whatever it is. And so we construct a heaven to run toward, a hell to run away from. And then I ask, what are you willing to change that you could change, that you feel good about changing? What's the one tiny little thing that we can start dealing with right in this moment? And I don't care who you are, even if you're not like a health and fitness junkie who has to dive in head first. If that's where we start, we have a heaven to run toward, a hell to run from, and one damn thing we can make better every day, then I think we're in a good place to start. And I don't think that's asking too much of anybody.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool way to look at it. And I know that when you ask somebody, why do you want to get fit? So many people will just say, my kids, or some kind of surface answer. Maybe it sounds good. People like to say their kids because it sounds good. But oftentimes that's not even the case. It's something much deeper. It could be something very personal, like for me, being bullied and picked on because I was a shrimpy little weakling and I couldn't stand up for myself and wouldn't. And so, things like that. I think it's important to get to the root of those things versus, I want to look better. I'm tired of having this gut. Why? Why is that important to you? So
in the training world, we used to call it digging for the nugget, right? Like, why do you want this? And somebody might give you I just want to lose 10 pounds, or, I want to be healthier, or I want to get off these medications. But the problem is our limbic system, which is our emotional center of the brain, is not connected to our executive functions, meaning it doesn't have a voice. We feel a certain way, but we don't know why we feel that way. And if we think about it long enough, and if somebody asks us long enough, eventually we can peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, to really get to the heart of why these 10 pounds are kicking our ass lately, or why we want to get off these medications, or why we would like to, insert thing that really matters here and why we feel so strongly about it. And if we can get that deep, I think it was Nietzsche who said, he who has a why can bear any how, and things become a lot easier after that. Exactly
right. So a couple things. So I want to get into a little bit to hormones. I know you really dig into the hormonal aspect of the dad bod, and I want to ask you a couple questions about that. But first, I think that the big issue that most guys struggle with is diet, right? It's easy. The easy part is going to the gym or finding, exercising. That's the simple part. The hard part is what you put in your mouth every day. So do you subscribe to any particular approach or style to eating? I know there's so many different hot, ketos and all that other stuff out there that some are fads, some are not. But, what's your approach with yourself and your clients?
It's a great question, brother. The challenge with diet is that from a genetic perspective, there's probably something that works well for you that doesn't work well for me. And then if you incorporate your taste and your personality and your lifestyle and how many kids you have and what they like to eat, by the time you get down to the nuts and bolts of every day, what's the best diet for you, quote unquote, it's going to look almost completely different for every single individual. Even if we said that genetics was 50% of it and your, lifestyle up to this point is the other 50% of it. Some people are going to do great with keto. Some people are going to do great with intermittent fasting. A good example of this is, intermittent fasting seems to boost testosterone and growth hormone for guys. However, the female population is horribly understudied, and there are some studies that suggest that intermittent fasting might actually reduce growth hormone and increase cortisol in the ladies and mess with their resting metabolic rate. Or in other words, female hangriness is a real thing. Can I get an amen from the guy choir?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, and there's some probably good evolutionary reasons for that. But personally, for me, when it comes to me and my clients, I had to have a good underlying understanding and underlying principle for why I would make certain dietary recommendations. And what I settled on was the hormonal system. No matter what your genetics are, and no matter what your personality, lifestyle, tastes, and blah, 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 whatever those are, all of us have the same hormonal system because we're all mammals. We have insulin, cortisol, testosterone, and thyroid. And there's a little bit of variance from person to person there, but by and large, your hormonal system doesn't differ very much from that of a rat or that of a chimpanzee, which means that many nutritional studies can actually translate on a hormonal level. And we can say that what works for some people generally works for everybody from a hormonal perspective. And so I use hormones as a guiding principle for the nutritional recommendations that I make to my clients. And that's really what I've built my practice on.
So when you're building a program or a diet, so your first consideration is looking at, like, say for a man, you're looking at how to increase testosterone or reduce estrogen, control insulin. I mean, so you're looking at those things first before you say, okay, let's rule out, pasta or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually just finished the hormone series on the Defining Dad Bod show. And basically what I've done is I've created a hierarchy of hormones. Insulin is the foundation of your hormonal pyramid. Then from there, you have cortisol, your stress hormone. Then you have testosterone and estrogen, which are your androgens. And then one step up from that is your thyroid. So if you could picture a pyramid and you could do nutrition and lifestyle things that would affect different hormonal systems in your body. If you try to address testosterone, for instance, without addressing cortisol and without addressing insulin, then you're going to see very little results. And you're not going to be very impressed with yourself, and you're probably not going to see much change in your testosterone. And so you have to address insulin because it affects cortisol, testosterone, and thyroid hormones. You have to address cortisol because then cortisol affects testosterone and thyroid, and then so on.
Okay, so the big question is then, how do you control insulin? For the guy listening, what's the thing
great
that
question.
They start with?
For the vast majority of my people, and this is different. If you have performance goals, like you want to lift more weight, you want to run a marathon faster, that kind of thing, your changes are going to differ a bit because most of the people that I work with from a dad bod perspective, as you can imagine, they have body composition goals. They want to lose fat and gain muscle. Basically, nuts and bolts, that's what they would like to see happen in their body. And so from that perspective, when we're talking about insulin, there are several things that you can do to get insulin working for you rather than against you. But the two simplest things from a nutrition perspective is you have to limit yourself in sugar eaten per day, and you have to increase the amount of fiber that you eat per day. Very simply, the American Heart Association recommends that you get no more than 40 grams of sugar in your world every single day if you have body composition goals. Their recommendations actually come from staving off cardiovascular disease, but I've translated that to guys to say, hey, start counting your sugars. If you can stay under 40 grams per day, then we're getting somewhere. And then from a fiber perspective, guys should be getting more than 30 grams of fiber per day. And generally, we want to see that coming from your vegetables rather than your grains.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, that's the first easy step. And so, most guys, I think when they hear testosterone, that's the big one, right? They want to think, how do I increase my testosterone? And, as you said, there's a pyramid here, and there's a lot of stuff out there about how to naturally improve testosterone. There's TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, which I've heard a number of things about. But so once that's out of the way, you're dealing with the insulin, and the cortisol is the stress hormone. So in your experience, what do we do to keep that in check, the cortisol in our
so
in our
leading
body?
up to testosterone, just to make sure that everybody's clear on this, your insulin system affects your stress hormone system. If your blood sugar is crashing, then what happens is you're internally creating a stress thing to run from, or as I like to say it, you're creating a stress monster inside of you. If your blood sugar is crashing, if you are not regulating insulin well, then you are internally stressing yourself out, and that's driving things like caffeine consumption, poor sleep, terrible recovery from exercise, that kind of thing. So if you address insulin, then you set the stage to help cortisol. And the reason cortisol matters from a perspective of testosterone is if you're right now, or wherever you're listening, you're probably listening while you're driving. So if all of a sudden the guy in front of you slams on his brakes and you're like, and you slam on your brakes, that like crazy feeling that you have is epinephrine and then cortisol. So it's increased heart rate, your pupils dilate, everything gets ready to fight or flight, so to speak. And when that happens, in that moment, all of the blood from your intestinal tract goes away. It goes into your limbs because you don't need to digest food while you're fighting a mountain lion or trying not to die in a car wreck, right? Your nails stop growing, your hair stops growing. And what happens is your body takes a lot of resources from your other hormone systems in order to put all systems on fight or flight mode, right? And so what happens is you end up burning the candle at both ends. And testosterone draws directly from the wax of that candle. Specifically, it's called DHEA. And you don't want your DHEA going to cortisol when your DHEA should be going to testosterone. And so if we don't get the cortisol system under control, then what happens is you have no DHEA to draw from a testosterone perspective. I hear guys say all the time, oh, when I was younger, I could stay up all night, I could eat a whole pizza and it didn't really matter, and now I'm 40 and I just got old and my metabolism slowed down. That's not what happened at all, bro. You've been burning the candle at both ends so long that you just ran out of wax. And now your testosterone is in the rut, and you have to rebuild the candle wax, so to speak, by getting this cortisol hormone under control. So how we do that, we set a bedtime for ourselves and set a wake time. Cortisol is built on a slow-moving train called the circadian rhythm. And if we're going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every morning, then we can make huge strides toward rebuilding the candle wax. I know that's not always appropriate when you're a parent. I have a whole episode called How to Work Out While Sleep Deprived, just for you guys out there who've got a 3-year-old who wakes up in the middle of the night, or a 3-month-old, even more fun. So the sleep has a huge role to play on that. Another thing that has a huge role to play in your cortisol system is your caffeine consumption. I recommend cutting off your caffeine consumption by 12 p.m. every day if you're on a normal, work sleep cycle, because the caffeine can sit in your system for up to 10 to 12 hours after that. And even if you could get to sleep, your sleep's going to be really poor, because those deeper stages of sleep are the ones that rebuild the candle wax, so to speak. And then the another thing that I recommend is, this is where the supplements really come in, from a multivitamin, fish oil, magnesium, vitamin D, all of the things that your body needs in order to rebuild the candle wax. I recommend starting during the cortisol phase. Not because I'm a supplement junkie by any means. There's a lot to say about supplements, but if I'm going to recommend supplements, it's during this time to rebuild the candle wax. And then we talk about a maintainable supplement regimen in the future.
So how important is going to bed and waking up at the same time versus just getting, let's call it 8 hours of quality sleep? But, one night you're in bed at 9, one night it's at 11, but you're still getting the same 8 hours. That's a great question, man.
Like I said, your circadian rhythm is a slow moving train. So I'll give you an example. This is something that happens to a lot of people. They'll go to bed at 9 during the week because they have to get up early for work during the week, right? So they go to bed at 9, and then on the weekend they stay up for 2 or 3 hours, and then they wake up 2 or 3 hours later than usual in the morning on the weekend. And then we wake up, and now everybody hates Mondays. They're like, oh, Mondays suck. Why do Mondays suck? Well, you just taught your body to increase your cortisol at 9 a.m. rather than 6 a.m. like you do every other day. And when you do that for a couple of days, what happens is you wake up at 6 a.m. on Monday for work, and you feel like garbage. Why? Well, your circadian rhythm has been set now to wake up at 9 a.m. instead, because that's what you did over the weekend. So as far as how important it is in order to do that the same time every night and every morning, it's paramountly important. If your cortisol system is not on a normal rhythm, then what happens is you're constantly fighting it. And so rely on sugar and you'll rely on caffeine to make it through the times when you feel like crap. And both of those things are shooting you in the foot. So if we could all just get on a damn bedtime and get on a damn wake time and stay consistent with that, it would go huge strides to help our testosterone because of the cortisol system.
Sure. Actually, it's funny. We just read we have a book club as part of my private group, and we just read Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson, and talked about obviously the importance of sleep on so many things, and it doesn't get enough attention because it's boring, right? I mean, it's just boring.
A fascinating piece of research was in one study, they pitted nutrition changes. So they put people on a diet for 6 weeks, and then sleep changes. They made people go to bed and wake up at a certain time. The study was done on over 300 individuals who were obese, and they found that getting people to sleep well actually resulted in more weight loss and longer sustained weight loss. So 12 weeks later, these people didn't gain their weight back compared to the people who were put on a low calorie diet. And so the people who are on a low calorie diet, they did lose some weight, but not as much as the people who just slept well and went to bed at a specific time and woke up at a specific time. Very fascinating study. The researchers called it sleep as the cure for obesity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can believe that. And, I really try to make things as simple as possible, especially for men, right? The simpler the better for men. It comes down to the basics, right? Move more, watch what you're eating, drink a lot of water, get your sleep, reduce your stress, get outside, like the basics of healthy living. But, too many people are caught up in, trying to pay $19.99 for a fast cure for it, or some kind of hack diet or a supplement or a pill that's going to shortcut all of these things. And so, it's so common to see that, and I think that if we just covered the very basics at the beginning, strength train 3 to 4 times a week, do some cardiovascular exercise, walk more, move more, do some kind of yoga, maybe meditation, get outside, get some sunlight, get your stress down, find a way to handle it, sleep well, those things should be the very minimum, right? But how many people do you know, how many busy dads are doing all of them consistently? Not enough. And so that's why the supplement industry is so huge is, I could just take this, or I can, take a pre-workout, or I can take whatever and it'll be fine. And it's just not working. We just have to go back and just focus on some of the basics. And then from there, then you can start having those other conversations about how do we take it to the next level. But, just start there.
We have more information now than we've ever had before. And literally gigabytes and terabytes of information are being added every day to the body of health and fitness research. We are not at an information deficit. What we are at is a practical application deficit. And for many people, they know what to do. They're just not doing it. They don't even know why they're not doing it sometimes. And from a health and fitness perspective, one of the things that I really care about is I want you to see this as such a long-term thing that you can't even see the end. That's why we construct a heaven to run toward, because heaven's very far away. Heaven, you have to die to get there almost, like what does the sunshine and rainbows actually look like? Okay, cool. Now, if we take that long-term of a perspective and approach, then we can appreciate that this is going to be a lifestyle change. It's going to be a consistent, you are what you consistently do. And so every day we're going to work toward that heaven that we've created for ourselves. And one day we're going to look up a year later, 2 years later, and go, who the hell was that guy a year ago? Who the hell was that guy 2 years ago? I don't even recognize him in the mirror because I am a different person. And there's actually a lot of biology around that, which is the idea of homeostasis. Your body works really, really hard to maintain the status quo. And if you go on some crazy 8-week kick to get 6-pack abs, the pendulum swing back is going to be even harder on you than the pendulum swing to get the 8-pack abs or 6-pack abs. I guess some people can have 8-packs in 8 weeks, right? So if we don't take a long-term view in the health and fitness industry, if we don't take a long-term view of behavior change for our own personal health and fitness, then we're never going to get there. We're always going to be riding some sort of roller coaster, and that's not what I want for our kids.
Yeah, exactly. And you said there's so much research being added, every day, and there's tons, but I think more than research, it's information and mostly marketing based. So most of what we read is bro science and in whatever you want to call it, but people are trying to make money. And so, people are creating content in order to facilitate sales, right? So we're not really getting research. We're not getting facts. We're getting, watered down, passed around information that's being passed off as as research, but it's really not, and that's why it's so confusing for so many people, that you Google one thing and you've got 10 million different opinions on it and 100 different experts, and they're all saying different things. And, we just don't know what to believe. And so a lot of people don't do anything, right? They're just like, this is just too much. I don't know what to do. Who do I listen to? I mean, I see it all the time still. I mean, it's terrible. 45-year-old men that are like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to eat. And like, how does that happen? Like, how do you go through your whole life and you don't have any idea about this stuff? And it's because, one, they didn't learn about it, but two, there's too many opinions. Like, everybody sounds articulate and educated, like they know what they're talking about. And again, at the end of the post or wherever, it's a sales pitch for a program, a book, a guide, whatever, coaching. And it's
yeah, absolutely.
It's nuts.
And
it's nuts.
I often will tell my clients, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. And I think one of the things that really confuses the health and fitness world often is what quote research actually is. And again, I've already said we have all the information we need. It's not an information problem. It's a practical application problem, right? So an example is the ketogenic diet's a huge fad right now. And if you're doing the ketosis thing, I'm not knocking you and saying you're doing something stupid, but when we talk about research around ketosis, there are no significant long-term large population studies around ketosis. And so when somebody says, "Oh, my friend got great results with ketosis," and there's all of these supplements on the shelf that are telling you that you can eat ketones, which, by the way, acetone, my wife cleans her nails with acetone. I don't know if I would be pouring ketones down my throat. I don't even think humans have ever eaten ketones, but that's just my first thought from an organic chemistry background. But that being said, we talk about quote research, and when I say we, I mean the health and fitness community. We talk about quote research, but when you look at it, there's like 30 male college age students under the actual study surveillance, and they're like, yeah, we boosted testosterone with intermittent fasting, ketosis. Well, that's fan-freaking-tastic. But when you're a 47-year-old guy and you've got 3 kids and you've got a job and whatnot, and you're trying to eat like a pound of MCT oil to get your ketones up, like, really? Like, is that really the lifestyle we're aiming for? I'm sorry. I would love to see a 10-year-long study of people who just ate animal fat for 10 years and whether or not they're doing well before I'm going to put all my clients on that bandwagon, right? So I think it's important when people define research or are swayed by case studies and stuff, before you go like jumping on any bandwagons, think about what you've done in your life thus far and start making baby steps toward a better you. Maybe you can learn something from the ketogenic population and how to eat a little more fat and a little more protein and a little less carbohydrates. Great. You can incorporate one of those meals every day. That's awesome. But you don't need to jump headfirst into some kind of fad, because when you jump headfirst into something, the swing back is even harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I personally do really well with the Primal Diet. So the Primal Blueprint, Mark Sisson, he's done a tremendous amount of research, and he has a lot of science behind his books. It's not just pseudoscience. So I've had tremendous success myself, but when I talk about it, I always tell everybody, listen, this isn't the be all end all. This isn't the best diet. There is no best diet. There's no best way to eat. It's really indicative upon your lifestyle. It plays a huge role. So if you're used to eating rice with every single meal for whatever reason, that's how you grew up, it's your culture, whatever, and then I say you can never have rice again because it's not primal, how's that going to work out, right? It's not. So that's not a good fit for you. So you have to look at your lifestyle and say, okay, well, does this make sense? And so for keto, yeah, it's super hot right now, and it's a lot of these testimonials. People get caught up in, oh, I lost 50 pounds, or Joanne did this and lost a bunch of weight, so I have to do it. It's just marketing bullshit. I can't stand that. But how sustainable is having virtually no carbohydrates in your diet at all, ever? I mean, it's nuts. Like, I don't see how 99% of the population is going to be able to sustain that, especially given that the American diet is 50, 60% carbohydrates right now. A lot of it processed carbohydrates, packaged food, stuff like that. So going from that to none, extremely difficult. And of course, you're going to lose weight. when you eliminate an entire macronutrient, and it's crazy just to think that, people think these things are the be all end all, and these low calorie diets are just, terrible for people. And so, you're up against it just like I am, right? Oh, this is the way I got to do it. So-and-so lost a bunch of weight on this, so I know it works. Like, no, it worked for them. And let's just talk to them in a year and see what it looks like.
With a guy who, we've been working together for about a month. He's seeing some good results. And then his friend was like, oh yeah, you should do the keto life. It's working really well for me. And so I had to have a discussion with him about, first of all, is this what you want for your kids? Because you've ridden the roller coaster, the yo-yo roller coaster of different kinds of diets for a long time, and now you're really committed to making a change for the long term. Do you really want them to see you go through another yo-yo? First of all. Second of all, have you ever heard of the APOE4 genetic mutation? He's like, no. I said, well, I have it. And it's a really important genetic mutation to understand because it means you suck at processing fat out of your bloodstream. And therefore you end up with more plaques in your arterial system. And so if you have a high fat, especially a high saturated fat diet, not just bad saturated fat from your McDonald's hamburgers, but even coconut oil, which is not necessarily a bad fat, but it's still high saturated fat, then you end up with more clogging in the arteries and a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. So personally, for me, a ketogenic diet will probably kill me by age 58, which would suck. So I won't be doing that. I'm consuming a diet about 40 to 50% carbohydrates, given a particular training cycle. The more endurance I'm doing, the more carbohydrates I'm getting. But we had that conversation this morning. He's like, no, I haven't heard of any of that. And I said, has your friend talked about any of his genetic mutations? He's like, no. I said, well, then you're becoming a guinea pig at your own risk. And that's your decision. You get to make that decision. But I, as a coach, will not lead you through that process. I do not condone you becoming a guinea pig for some sort of fad diet that hasn't been studied well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny because I had a client a while back who I'd been working with for a couple of years. And, he was eating a good diet. And then one day I show up and he says, oh, I found Drew Manning's website, who's the Fit to Fat to Fit guy. His ad popped up and I ordered all of his stuff and now I'm going to do keto. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what? So, it's not like this is uncommon. This is somebody that I had been talking with and coaching for a couple of years, and he still fell victim to a flashy piece of marketing with a bunch of testimonials. Oh, he was on NBC, he was on this, he was on that. So he must know what he's doing. And next thing you know, he wants to do keto. I'm like, well, you don't know anything about keto. You don't. So we had that conversation. He ended up not doing it. But, that's someone that's been coached. What about the rest of the masses that have no clue? They see Drew Manning or whoever it is and say, look at all these testimonials. Clearly, keto is the way to go. And then their life is hell because they can't eat carbs anymore and they're miserable, all in an effort to lose weight, which we don't want to lose weight, right? We want to lose body fat, and they're stripping out a lot of muscle when they're, it's just a crazy thing to me. And it's highly frustrating to see that. And I feel powerless against it because there's guys like you and I, and then there are 10 million marketers, Instagram, quote unquote, coaches that are selling this garbage and fads and coaching to unsuspecting people. It's to the masses that are ignorant. They don't know what they don't know, and they're being sold stuff and they're not learning the right things. And then they end up yo-yo dieting and struggling even more and quitting. And it's just a big revolving cycle.
Well, it's enough to piss me off, that's for sure. I've done my fair share of deadlift PRs with this on my mind. I'll say that, and some heavy metal in the background. But that being said, I will say that you never learn better, or you're never searching for truth better than when you get swindled pretty hard. And so the majority of the people that I've ever worked with have started working with me because they're like, I have tried everything, ... You're my last resort. And so, I mean, it sucks that you have to go through a lot of fluff and a lot of fads out there before you throw your hands up and go, well, that's bull crap. Like I'm ready to work with somebody who can personally help me, because obviously none of that fits where I'm at in my life. None of that fits what I need. And so on some hand, I see that as part of the economic pendulum swing. There's so many diets out there and so many things that people can spend their money on that's just not working for them for all of the reasons you and I have just talked about. And eventually either those people will come to find that it's all bull crap and they'll stop investing in it. Or they'll give up on lifestyle change and behavior change altogether. And I don't think that's the route of humanity, or at least I hope not. That's the tide I'm trying to stem, is the people who have tried everything. I don't want you to give up yet, because all of the fad diets out there are not the end all be all. Let's talk about your life personally.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you one more question. So let's take the average dad, 40 years old, been working at a desk job for 25 years. He hasn't really exercised consistently, 10, 15 years or more. He's probably carrying 20, 30 extra pounds of fat, mostly around his midsection, doesn't move well, doesn't feel great, his energy sucks. What are a couple of things that you would tell that guy to start with? How would that person get started on just a better path?
That's a really good question. I go back to how I start with my clients, and it's like, hey man, I need to understand what health and fitness heaven look like for you and what health and fitness hell look like for you. Because for that guy, the average dad, some guys have a dream of running a marathon someday. Some guys have a dream of just looking in the mirror and being happy where they're at. Some guys have a dream of picking up their toddler and not having back pain anymore. And so whatever health and fitness heaven looks like for you versus what health and fitness hell looks like for you, I think that's a really important place for that guy to start, even just to be motivated to make any changes at all. Because let's face it, we've got so much on our plate. We've got so much on our shoulders, providing for the family, trying to be a good guy, maybe even trying to be a good husband, maybe even trying to be involved in our community and do a good job at work and stuff. Like, who really wants to take on the health and fitness mantle at all? It seems like a whole bunch of work with very little payoff, only going to last a small amount of time. So I want to start with that guy understanding, what does this look like for you if everything goes well? And what does this look like for you if everything sucks and goes south? And then from there, what I would say is, we're going to start at the very bottom of the hormone system. The very simple changes, they're going to make a difference in the way you burn fat as a fuel source. And then we're going to move on, once you master those things, to the very simple changes. They're going to tame the stress monster and start rebuilding your hormonal stores. And then we're going to make the simple changes that boost your testosterone and help you to feel more confident and more like your 18-year-old self versus your tired 40-year-old self. And then we're going to start making the changes that will make your endocrine system more metabolically active with your thyroid and help you to have that huge boost in energy that you're going to need to be more productive in the world. And I think that's where we would start.
Okay. All right. And so if guys want to learn more about, hormones, and you go pretty deep on a lot of this stuff, where do they get that information on your site?
Yeah, you can check out the podcast. I would say start with Overcoming Obesity Part 1. We talk about the scope of the problem, and something you and I here have dabbled in or started to touch the top of the iceberg. I go pretty deep into what's going on and why it's a problem. And then from there, you can find part 2, 3, 4, and 5 going into the hormonal system and how we can address that. And so you can find that at www.definingdadbod.com/blog, and you can find part 1 of Overcoming Obesity there. And then if you're an iTunes person, you can also find that on iTunes.
Sweet, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the info, and keep up the good work.
Hey man, you too. And I appreciate hanging out with a fellow dad who's just as passionate about this as I am. And the next fad that comes around, what are you hoping to PR on in the gym while you're pissed off about it?
Right. Cool, man. Well, thanks. And remember, guys, if you aren't taking care of yourself first, you can't take care of your family the best way possible. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.